Hello chaps, we'll do this a little bit differently today. It's a slightly different video as well. I, for my many sins, happen to live in a place called Aylesbury in the Home Counties, and I've always been interested in history, probably since I was little, but never really Aylesbury's history. For whatever reason, London has always fascinated me, so most of my energies have gone on London. And then Portsmouth, because I spent much of my childhood there on holiday. But as with any town, and Aylesbury nowadays has a population of about 55, nearly 60,000 people, there is history, but there's also monuments or memorials, whatever you want to call them. Aylesbury was, until the 1960s really, a farm town. Cattle, we were still brought in, I think, as late as the early 1990s to what is now the Odeon / whatever car park, where the Maxwell Leisure Centre used to sit at the top, and that is still known by some people as the cattle market, or the cattle market car park. If you watch one of the Margaret Rutherford Miss Marple films, I believe Murder Ahoy or Murder at the Gallop, the opening credits have Aylesbury's Market Square in it. And indeed, Market Square has changed a little. So Market Square reflected the town's heritage, farming heritage, and thus has always been sort of like the centre, well, it is in the town centre, but sort of like the epicentre as such. The trouble is, of course, things change. Now, again, to the point that Aylesbury's not really a town of heroes as such. You go to London, of course, there are many statues and plaques and the like to many men, mostly, throughout London's history, but mostly it's recent history, the Georgian and Victorian period. One of the best examples probably is Waterloo Place at the foot of Lower Regent Street, and thereby just above the Mall, which leads you to the Palace. You've got the likes of Franklin, who was lost on the Northwest Passage, Captain Scott in the Antarctic just over a century ago, and more recently, Keith Park, commander of Number 11 Group, Fighter Command, Battle of Britain, one of two men, the other being Dowden, who probably helped save his country a great in terms of their strategy. And then, of course, you've got the likes of Nelson on his column, and you've got Wellington's names all over the place, and indeed Portsmouth has a strong connection with Nelson, being the last place he set foot in before going to the Victory and Trafalgar. And, you know, some local historians in Portsmouth bristle when they say, name somebody famous in Portsmouth. And, you know, most people say Nelson, but ever since I was little, Nelson is linked to Portsmouth in more ways than one. So Aylesbury. Well, as hopefully the pictures and little video are showing you, we have a war memorial atop the square. We've got a couple of statues off the side of it, and one at the foot. The Earl of Chesham, I don't know anything about, unfortunately, but is probably the most recent statue placed in the square, or at least the most recent person. You've got Benjamin Disraeli, you've got John Hampden. They're heroes nationally, really. Beaconsfield up the road was where Disraeli was MP for. I don't think he had anything to do with Aylesbury otherwise. John Hampden, probably a little bit more famous than Disraeli, because he was one of the 5 members of Parliament who Charles I came to arrest in early 1642, thus breaching Parliament's sovereignty. And I see the birds have flown and all that jazz. He was the MP, though, for Buckingham, the county seat, I suppose, the county's name, of course, writ large. And he died up the road, on closer to Thame and Oxford than Aylesbury. But I guess he is a hero because his statue is used as the council symbol, and it's on everything, and there's 1,001 things named after Hampden in some way. But again, he was a national hero. He was one of the MPs that bristled at paying ship money, which was usually a tax reserved for those on coastal territories like probably Portsmouth and Plymouth and Bristol. Whereas why are you paying ship money in a landlocked county like Buckinghamshire? So anyway, you get to the War Memorial, and these are heroes. These are men that have left this town to fight in a foreign field. Like most memorials in the country, it came along just after the Great War, the First War. And more so than the Second War, really, these men all came from the town and other places and died in the trenches. It is a sad, if remarkable, fact that there are very few places in England and the rest of the United Kingdom that were untouched by the First War. I believe they're known as golden villages. It's crazy the scope of the First War, although that is not the subject of this video, but there's about 20 or so names from Aylesbury, but you go about 3 or 4 miles up the road to a village called Butler's Cross. They lost 6 men, 2 or 3 of them were from the same family, and they lost 2 men in the Second World War. But the intriguing thing, as the video will show you, is that I've always been struck by it, is that you have the First and Second Wars, granted, but on the end, sometimes feeling like an afterthought, there is one name from the Falklands campaign of 1982. And in the past couple of weeks, having read a book about the Falkland War, or at least an aspect of it, I did some searching because I thought, well, it says Lance Corporal, so, you know, perhaps he was lost, I don't know, on the Sir Galahad perhaps, or somewhere on East Falkland, Mount Pleasant, Goose Green. And then looking at it, he was killed in a friendly fire incident. They were very rare in the Falkland War. One of the more shocking elements probably was that one ship landed her shells on a house, killing, which were the only 3 Falkland Islanders lost in the war. But this chap was from Aylesbury, and I'm trying to find out about him, but it is a little bit thin on the ground. It seems that his Gazelle was flying over East Falkland on 6th of June 1982, and in the House of Parliament, a question was raised almost 5 years after the war in 1987, and Hansard records every scrap that is said or made in the House. For instance, David Blunkett's guide dog, I think it was the first, if only, animal that has been registered in Hansard when another MP tripped over him and the dog made some kind of noise and that went into Hansard. So you only have to scratch your nose and it's in there. An MP raised a question and said essentially, you know, what the hell happened, what lessons have been learned. And as I say, he was a co-pilot flying over East Falkland within the airspace of 5th Infantry Brigade on a brigade task. Hansard says there was no requirement under the standard operating procedures in force at the time for any authority outside the brigade to be informed, nor did the board find any evidence to suggest that anybody outside 5th Brigade knew about this, and so on. You know, 5th Brigade had prior knowledge of the flight. At the time of the accident, HMS Cardiff was operating off the east coast of East Falkland on a naval gunfire support mission in support of 3 Commando Brigade. Concurrently, HMS Cardiff had been tasked with enforcing the total exclusion zone, and as part of this to deter or destroy Argentine aircraft attempting to use Port Stanley airfield. There was no IFF, it seems. It was heading towards Port Stanley aircraft. I mean, by the 6th of June, the war had very firmly turned in the British favour. The assumption was that the aircraft, the Gazelle, was a Hercules transport aircraft, which confusingly Britain was also using, of course, and thereby, within the rules of engagement, HMS Cardiff fired a sea dart and shot it down. There were no survivors. 4 men were lost, including Lance Corporal Cocton. As is always the way, Hansard remarks that since the incident, procedures and the like have been improved and we've learned our lesson, kind of thing. And as always in this situation, it's come too late for those that died. Now, it is an unfortunate effect of serving in the military that when you are called into action, you have a strong possibility, depending on where you are and what you're doing, of being killed or injured in the line of duty. And of course, something like 255 men were killed in the Falkland Islands, and again, there were friendly fire incidents. I echo the words of Hansard by saying that my metaphors go still almost 40 years on to these men who died 3 years before I was born. But that is Aylesbury's Falklands hero, who one day I might find out more about. I'm not sure what else perhaps there is to know, but put a face to a name, because I can't find any images at them. I've not really seen the Falklands mentioned on other memorials. I mean, as I say, only compared to the First World War, the death toll was microscopic. But if we have one name, there must be other memorials with it on. I know Portsmouth now, and has for a few years, got a dedicated Falkland campaign memorial, because of course a lot of the task force, like the Invincible and Hermes, left, or at least, and very much returned to Portsmouth. But we'll see what happens next year for the 40th anniversary. Thank you for listening, chaps, if you've made it this far.